Hello, I'm Lady Juniper, and today we're going to be talking about the quest Caribert. And if you haven't played it yet, this is going to be full of spoilers for you, so you probably want to go finish the quest or something. Because this video is about discussing the quest and what I think is going to happen next in the story. Now, if you did watch my Will Kaeya die video, you'll know I was right on the ball when it comes to what Kaeya's role in the Caribert quest was, which was pretty much he's going to turn up for 30 minutes, which he did, send Traveller letter to meet up, which he did, explain his role in the storyline, which he did, and then promptly leave again, which he did. I was 100% correct. I mean, I did a lot of potential storytelling theories in that video as well. And technically, none of them have really been disproven, except for the fact that, I said I suggested things that could happen if Kaeya did go with them. But obviously, my main thought was Kaeya wasn't. He was just going to turn up, explain his role, and leave. And that all happened. I was right on the ball on that. And I was right on the ball on that because I was pretty much applying typical storytelling tropes to the story. It's very easy to kind of predict generally what might happen in a story, just by most stories follow a story beat. And Genshin is no different, really. It does follow traditional story beats. It's just a little bit different about how it does it. And when it comes to Kaeya, it was quite simple to predict that he was going to only turn up for a short while because it made sense. I do explain in the video why it makes sense, so go watch that if you want an explanation. But we're going to move on to what happens next, which there's a lot of revelations in the Caribert quest, which obviously I couldn't foresee, such as how Kaeya is important to the story, what his role is. Obviously, I knew that he was of the Albrecht clan, that they were regents in Cunria, that they weren't technically royalty, that they had an important nobility role. What obviously I can't predict is that they also founded the Abyss Order. But on further consideration, that does sort of make some things make sense in a way. So I was thinking about this, but we'll get getting distracted. We're getting distracted. So Kaeya's role is a descendant from a clan that is heavily involved in the Abyss Order. We see the founding or the beginning of the foundation of the Abyss Order in the quest, but we don't really know what role Kaeya is going to play in the story overall as a descendant. Now, lots of people are like, is Kaeya a descendant of Caribert? Or is Kaeya a descendant of Caribert's father, whose name I can't recall? I personally think Kaeya is just a general descendant of the family of Albrecht. I don't think he's a direct line to Caribert's father. It's possible because Caribert was a legitimate child, which suggests that his father could have been married to someone else, and that means he could have had another child with the woman he was married to, because he couldn't marry Caribert's mother for whatever reason, and the easiest explanation is that he was already married. And usually the rule is the easiest explanation is usually always the answer. I don't think it's a big stretch to assume he was already married and couldn't marry her, which is why Caribert was illegitimate. And thus we could assume from the same logic that he had legitimate children that weren't controversial, which Kaeya could then be descended from. Or he could be descended from the guy's brothers or sisters. Noble clans tend to be quite large, so he doesn't have to be a direct line. On a storytelling basis, it would make sense that he is, just because of that connection, but there doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be any connection whatsoever. It just has to be a link. Of course, considering like the background of his clan and the role in Conria and with the Abyss Order, I think they will make him a direct line, but I feel like he's going to be a direct line from the legitimate side of the Alberic family. And then, of course, you have the thing of Kai's eyes. Like, his eyes don't look like a Conrian eye, and I've seen lots of people being like, why isn't Kaeya cursed? Surely he should be a Hilichurl. Well, I don't know, guys. Unless I missed something in all of the stories involving Dane, I don't think it was ever said that a descendant from a pure-blooded Conrian is also affected by the curse. We know the people of Conria who turned into Hilichurls were, obviously, and we know the true-blooded Conrians who were there at the time were, but I don't think there's anything in the story that actually says any children the true-blooded Conrians have also have the curse. And if they did have the curse, then logically it would work similar to how like elven aging works. Like if Kai is immortal, which he can't be because he's not a pure-blooded Conrian, we can tell from the eyes, then you wouldn't tell that he's immortal until he aged if it works like elves. And it doesn't make sense for him to grow older and turn into a Hilichurl. I don't think Celestial would have cursed the children of Conria, and there's nothing to suggest that they cursed anything other than the people that were there at the time of the catalysm. We haven't been told. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we haven't been told anything that suggests that if two Conrians or Conrian and a normal person got together after the catalysm and had a child, that there would be anything wrong with that child. That is a piece of information we don't have, and I personally think it's safe to assume that an Alberic member of the family went off, started a family after the catalysm with, like, I don't know, someone from Mondstadt or whatever, and started a new line of descendants who were part Conrian, which is why Kaeya's eye is special, because eye theory, because eye theory is important, and so they've carried on that legacy from the original pure-blooded Conrian and all the stories and all the information from Conria without actually having the curse. That's what I think, because we haven't been told otherwise. And I think that is what they intended. I don't think that we're going to find out that Kaeya is cursed. I don't think the eye patch is hiding a curse, because I think that's always been a fan theory that Kaeya is cursed, not an actual proven point from Hoyoverse or any of the material we're given. I haven't replayed Dane's second quest yet, so I might change my mind. I need to complete the Archon quest on my Bose account to do that. But from what I remember, there is no evidence to suggest that Kaeya should be cursed. And I think that's a thing that lots of people are getting confused about. We're focusing a lot on Kaeya, but at this point, I do think still that Kaeya will appear in the Dainsleeves quests again. At this point, we have no evidence he's gone back to Mondstadt, and until he appears in another event, we can assume he's still in Cymru. Like, that whole spiel about him being there for a drinking holiday, I know it wasn't a drinking holiday, but it was totally a drinking holiday. I think it's complete baloney. We know Kaeya lies. D-Luke tells us that. Kaeya's a big fat liar, which I don't think he was being truthful to us about his reasoning for being here. Like, the thing is, the Knights of Favonius are not the guards and the tourist industry of Mondstadt. It is not Kaeya's job to come to Cymru and test drinking spices for the industry of Mondstadt. That is not the Knights of Favonius' job. They're meant to protect Mondstadt, so why is Kaeya here? Like, I know, like, the Knights have done stuff, like, help organize stuff for events, so technically they do tourism stuff, but I feel like coming to Port Ormos for trade reasons is not the job. I can see maybe, like, because I think Mondstadt is ruled by a council. It's not run by the Knights of Favonius. The Knights of Favonius does what the council asks them to do. They could have asked them to send someone to do this, but I feel like this is something that Kaeya could have convinced someone to let him do in a guise of doing something else. That's what I think. I haven't really talked much about Caribert himself and the Loom of Fate. My memory on the Loom of Fate operation from Dane's second quest is a little bit hazy, but from what I recall, the Abyss Order were trying to transform monsters into gods. And I feel like this might have something to do with what Kunria was originally trying to do and why they got nailed. Like, the way the guy acted in the quest towards the purple gem and the abyss lectern suggests that he wasn't particularly unfamiliar with how the abyss lectern looked. There was something there appealing to him, and he hadn't even been influenced by the crystal yet. I think Conria. There's lots of theories about Conria trying to push back the abyss, but I don't think that's the case. I think Conria was full out going to war with Celestia, and that they perhaps turned to abyssal power to do that, to create their own god. Now, I want you to look at this ruin golem, and I want you to tell me that this was built with the intention to fight abyss lecterns, abyss mages, and all those other tiny, quite stompable creatures from the abyss. Um, Big fat no, I think. This wasn't built to fight the Abyss. This was built to fight Celestia. They have death cannons. Um, I think the Abyss golems were a last-ditch effort to shoot down Celestia. They're kind of like... Celestia's over there, I think. They're kind of like facing Celestia, which is why I think it's easy to assume that was the role and it just went wrong. Um, we know from Carabert's father that they saw the Archons there during Conria. We know from the Archon quest that the Archons were summoned to Conria to fight in the Catalysm. And I don't think they were fighting the Abyss. They were fighting Conria. I think Conria turned to the Abyss as a tool to fight Celestia. And while we talked before in my last video about how Deshret didn't get nuked by Celestia, and why didn't he get nuked? Even though he accessed forbidden knowledge and he also tainted Irminsul, why didn't he get nuked? I think the big difference to why he didn't get nuked in comparison to Conria might be because Conria, rather than just like gaining access to forbidden knowledge, they purposely went out of their way to harness the abyssal power against Celestia, which, considering the nature of the abyss, like it's one thing to have forbidden knowledge in your world, it's another one to have foreign powers in your world, which I think was the line drawn. I think that's why Celestia summoned the Archons, because you've also got to ask yourself, what could kill an Archon? Because Raiden's sister died in the Catalysm, and I don't think she died to another god. I think she died to abyssal power destroying her. Um, like the powers wielded in that conflict was immense, and it was the Archons versus Khaenri'ah. I think the Caribert quest makes that quite clear, and it was. We were told this in the Archon quest too, that the Archons were summoned to war, and Rukkhadvala stayed behind to guard Irminsul. Why was she guarding Irminsul? Probably because I suspect to avoid further corruption from the Abyss. Now, the Irminsul is such a weird one because there's so many dead trees about. Like, there's the dead tree in the mountain, there's the Irminsul roots, and all the trees in the domains are petrified. They're not technically alive trees, they're fossilized trees that you have to infuse with resin to put life back into them. They are dead trees. Like the roots that we get in the ley lines are the best form of living Irminsul roots. So I've got really gone off at one. Now I want to move on away from Caribert and the many questions we have about what we were told and move on to what I think's going to happen next. And I think we can sort of have an idea of what might happen next by looking at the hero's journey. Those of you who might be unfamiliar with the hero's journey is a pretty traditional story device. It's used pretty much the layout of so many Hollywood films and such. You can apply it to nearly everything. It's pretty much the traditional story structure, whether or not most people intend to do it or not. Because obviously people copy from the media that they consume, and if most media follows the hero's journey, then most people are going to structure their stories to follow the hero's journey. Like, you have to kind of be aware of the hero's journey and deliberately try to not follow it, to kind of not follow it, because so many stories just naturally follow this progression. And we can apply this to Genshin. I think it is relevant because the hero's journey is an achievement line in this game. I haven't got it yet, so I don't know what the card says. But I feel like they've put this in here because it is important to the story of Genshin. You are following the hero's journey. And if we look at the hero's journey, we can kind of determine where we are on it. So you have the call to adventures, which is pretty much when the traveller starts the game. She's called to adventure. Her call to adventure is to go find the sibling. Most Hero's Journey have a refusal of the call, but as you can see on the second one here, doesn't necessarily have a refusal of the call. That's an optional step. Then you have the meeting of the mentor or supernatural aid, which is Paimon. You meet Paimon. She's a supernatural aid. You could also argue that Venti or Zhongli can also count for this. Then you have the crossing the threshold, which is the crossing over to the mundane, like the normal, into the special world, like the wibbliness, which for the traveller was meeting Dane and finding out about the Abyss and finding out that their sibling was part of the Abyss. I personally think this is where the traveller is on the journey. They're doing tests, meeting allies, and establishing enemies. They have not yet reached this stage. They approach the innermost cave, which leads to, and I really like that both of these heroes' journeys have this on it. This one has The ordeal in the abyss facing the shadow self, and this one has revelation, abyss, death, and rebirth. Which, I don't know, maybe Hoyoverse looked at this and took it very literally. Not all of them call the revelation step facing the abyss or whatever, but a lot of them do, which I thought was very interesting. But it's pretty much a turning point in the hero's journey where they make a revelation either about themselves or the quest they are on, and something happens to make them take action, in which case they transform, they receive some wibbiness, um, and stuff happens, and it pretty much ends on them returning home. But there's this, I was thinking about this in the hero's journey, and while you can loosely apply it to the traveller, it applies a lot better to Kaeya, if you think about it. And Kaeya is on a very different point on the hero's journey to the traveller. We have, for the last 2 years, been sitting with Kaeya in the ordinary world, establishing his role in Mondstadt and how important Mondstadt and the people there are to him. This quest is the call to action, the crossing of the threshold for Kaeya. It is telling him, Kaeya, you are related to the abyss, and he's going to go away thinking about that. And people might be like, oh, is Kaeya going to go join the abyss? And I'm going to tell you, no, he's not. Because Kaeya has already made his decision about where he stands in the greater scheme of things. Without even bringing into the abyss, Kaeya has already made that choice. Kaeya made that choice years ago before in-game events. In Kaeya's vision story, we learn that Kaeya gained his vision after his father's death. He approached Diluc to confess, because his knowledge of Conria, his family, what he believed he had been sent to Mondstadt for, had weighed heavily on his mind for a very long time. And after his father's death, he approached Diluc and confessed to him. He told him everything about him, his innermost secrets, his origin, his purpose, his conflicts, and Diluc attacked him, and they had a fight, and Diluc almost killed him in his anger. The reason why Kaeya wears an eye patch is because Diluc cut him across the face, leaving a scar, which Kaeya wore the eye patch before that anyway, but but the eye patch hides a scar, and in that fight, to defend himself from Diluc's rage, Kaeya summoned forth his vision to defend himself, which is how he obtained his vision, by being true to himself and revealing his innermost secrets. I'm not sure what cryovisions really relate to. People say love. I'm not sure if it is true that the cryo archon is the archon of love. I don't know where people have read that or where that has come from. I don't remember anyone ever saying that in game. But the theory is people's visions are related to the essence of the element itself. Like Hydro is for justice, and all the people who have Hydro visions have a strong sense of justice and purpose. All the people who have Pyro visions have a lot of courage, determination, and kind of like an aggressive approach to them, whatever. So cryovisions are hypothetically belonging to people who have strong connections, I think, in either a familial way or a romantic way, that they have a family, they have a very strong connection, and that brings forth their vision, I think, which is why Kaeya gets his vision in this fight, by being true to himself and being true to Diluc. And it's because of this reason I believe Kaeya has already made his choice, and his choice is Mondstadt. He has chosen Mondstadt over Conria. And no matter what people might think, he's made that choice. He made that choice before the beginning of the game. He's chosen Mondstadt. And I think this vision story makes that perfectly clear. I don't think he's going to betray anyone, but he will have to make a choice. Kaeya is heading towards the abyss, the revelation, the point where he has to make a choice, where he has to determine Mondstadt or his family and Conria. But I think he's already made that choice. He just doesn't know it yet fully. And I think the rest of the quests with Gainsleaf and the Traveller will involve Kaeya reaching to this point, exploring his relationship with the Elberich family and Conria, and Kaeya being like, well, I have already made my decision and sides with the Traveller. And I think it will be a really cool moment when that happens. I'm pretty sure that is what's gonna happen because all the signs are there. Anything else? Story-wise, I can't really tell you. Like, it's very easy to read stuff like that in the story of Genshin because the information is sort of there already, laid out in like story stuff. So we can predict Kaeya's role in the story, and we can sort of predict the destination that the traveller's gonna take, but all the little details like the whys and the whats that we can't predict. Now, there's one last topic I want to talk about before signing off this video, and that is the information we receive in limited time events. I think Hoyoverse had stated before that they would never put important information to the overall story in an event quest, which is why a lot of the event quests are personal character stories, which one must question when it comes to someone like Albedo and all of his stuff, which I personally have never experienced. I've never watched the videos for. I don't really know much about it. Would suggest that Albedo isn't important to the overall plot of Genshin, believe it or not. Now, this recent event with Windbloom and the revelations dropped in that, it is leading up to what's going to happen next in the Archon quest. That's quite obvious. They told us who the voice is that talked to Traveller, and they explained who the Hexen Circle is, which, if you've only been playing the game for, like, I think I'm 9 months now, I think, you've never met the Hexen Circle before. Like, I think there was Alice in the in the summer event last year. I think her voice was in it. No, she wasn't. She was in town with Clee, wasn't she? So you never meet Alice. Like this, I think this is the first time I'm meeting Alice in the game, um, which is a weird experience. Now, one must question why they do this when the Hexen Circle is clearly quite important to the plot, right? Because we're going to meet one of them in the next Archon quest. They made that very apparent. They couldn't be more clear. I think they do this so people know about stuff before they introduce it into the main story. Because if you're like me, who hasn't played Albedo stuff or any of the previous stuff with Alice in it, this is your first introduction to the Hexen Circle. If I hadn't had this introduction and hadn't already sort of known who they were, either via reading Mono's story, or I think Lisa mentions them, if you play those characters or have those characters at all, look who I won on the standard banner. Finally. Her profile stories will be mine! But if you don't have all that stuff, this is the first time you're hearing about them. And if you're starting Genshin after Windbloom, Um, Hopefully you come across some content that introduces the Hexen Circle before you get to the end of the Archon quest where you meet the one in it now. Because if you don't, this is the first time you've ever heard about them and you don't know why they're important or anything, which is why the information they give in the event stuff is a little bit frustrating, because there should definitely be permanent stuff in the game that establishes this as well, that you don't have to go around hunting for. But I understand why they do some of it. Like the hidden strife thing with the Kaeya information, that's all optional to know about, but it is very handy to establish stuff, and it did set up this new Archon quest really well. But like some of it, like Albedo stuff, there's no reason not to have it as permanent content in the game unless it really is not that important. But it's hard to argue that it's not, unless really Albedo's never going to blow up Mondstadt or join forces with, I don't know, Gold or whatever. Like, that's kind of showing your hand about what's going to happen in the story. By not having Albedo stuff be permanent content, you're kind of saying this is never going to come up in the main story ever. It doesn't it? It does. And at that same sense, we had in Windbloom a little lore drop about Cyno, and I've mentioned this before, that Cyno has zero lore in his character stuff. There's none. You can't find it. It's not there. It's all about the Matra, which made us all very confused to where is Cyno's lore. And then they drop a tiny nugget of it in Windbloom, a nugget which you can honestly miss if you didn't know it was there because it's hidden away in the library on the second day. Why would they put that there in a limited time event? Now, one could be like, oh no, are they doing to Cyno what they did to Albedo? I'm not sure, because I think this is more like hidden strife than it is, I don't know what Albedo's Dragon Spy event was called. Sorry. Is it like Hidden Strife, or is it like Albedo? And a optional piece of dialogue interaction that you're very unlikely to find unless you know it's there, unless you happen to go into the Knights of Favonius's headquarters on the second after the second quest and find them in the library. Who does that? Not me, standardly. If I hadn't read about it on Twitter, I wouldn't have found him. Kind of, to me, smells a little bit more like Hidden Strife. Unless they're gonna like do a big event about Cyno, and it's a hint towards a Cyno related event where we find out all of his lore. But I don't think it's the case. I don't think it's the case at all. We'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. But yeah, I have many thoughts on this. I hope any of this made sense. I don't really have a conclusion. This is me ranting for like half an hour. But yeah, let me know what you think below. Leave a like. Do subscribe. I have many thoughts, and I should probably write them down in an organised manner so I can relate them off to you without going off on a crazy tangent like I am now. But you know, I am a being of chaos, and that's not that's not likely. All right. That's all from me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.